Word family, I have the pleasure and honor of sitting next to writer and director of the Oscar-nominated film Moonlight. And you are here with us today to talk about your newest project, If Beale Street Could Talk, which is written by James Baldwin. So you adapted that for screen, though, right?
Yeah. Back in 2013, I took a trip to Europe, and I wrote the screenplay for Moonlight and the first draft of this, an adaptation of James Baldwin's If Beale Street Could Talk.
So what made you decide to get into directing and writing? I know a lot of people are, you know, kind of wondering
Yeah,
that.
it kind of happened by accident. You know, I was at Florida State University, and I didn't go to Florida State to study film. I didn't realize they had a film school at the time. I was doing English literature and then creative writing, and I just happened to realize there was a film school at the university. You know, it's a big state school. It was the only school I could afford to go to. And the whole idea was they wanted kids from the state of Florida to build the film industry. And so they paid for everything. And so I got into this film school, and they forced you to do everything. Like, you had to run the camera, you had to run the sound, you had to do costume design, everything. I thought I just wanted to be a screenwriter, but you also had to direct. And once I directed, I was like, oh, this is where I want to be.
All right. So if Beale Street Could Talk, can you tell us a little bit about the movie?
Yeah, Beale Street Could Talk, which is adapted from the novel by James Baldwin, is essentially a love story, you know, about these two young characters, Tish and Fonnie, who I remember the first time I read the novel, I was grabbed by this idea of just seeing two young black people depicted as soulmates. And Tish and Fonnie are living their lives, and they realize that they are meant to be together. They consummate their relationship, and they realize they're going to have a child, and they need to tell these two families who don't get along that there is going to be a child born of this union. And then, of course, Fonnie and Tish cross paths with a rogue police officer, and he is accused of a crime he did not commit.
Okay. And so I know that for me, I did have a chance to see the movie, and I thought it was phenomenal, by the way. I should say that.
Thank you.
The biggest thing for me that I took away as far as one of the themes was black love, and not just romantic black love, but also family love, and the fact that they were, you know, really kind of unconditional with it. So what were some other themes that you were trying to get across with the film?
I mean, that was it primarily for sure. You know, I think that when Mr. Baldwin wrote this book, you know, he had so many different voices he spoke in. One of those voices was, you know, obsessed with family, with love, with romance. The other voice was obsessed with, you know, calling out, you know, all these systems that are in place to keep black folks disenfranchised. And I found the perfect blend of those two things in this story. And so you're right, it's about love, you know, romantic love, family love. You know, we're in Philadelphia, brotherly love and sisterly affection, you know. But I think it's also about this idea of communities, and communities being these places that can, in some ways, protect us, heal us through the systemic injustice that we do face.
Okay. And then the characters were phenomenal in the movie as well. So I'm sure that you had a big part in the casting process. What made you decide to go with the actors that you chose?
You know, when I write a script, I very rarely see an actor in my head, and so I'm hoping an actor will walk through the door and show me who the character is. And so for this film, again, it was about this idea of soulmates. So for our Tish and Fonnie, our two leads, played by Kiki Lane and Stephon James, it was about finding two young people who just had this connection. And then once we found them, it was about building families around them in an organic way, really building families. And Kiki Lane, who plays the main character in this film, has never acted in a film before.
Right.
And so for us, it was about building a family that could nurture her both on screen and also behind the camera and help her through the process. And that's how we ended up with Regina King, Coleman Domingo, and Tiana Paris.
Okay. And so I guess the other thing that I kind of wanted to know as well, like, there were a lot of great different shots, and so what kind of made you decide to shoot in the way that you did for the film?
Yeah, you know, part of it is just trying to, when you're working on an adaptation, you know, how can I take 5 pages of text, you know, and summarize it in as concrete an image as possible? You know, a lot of the visual research we did for this film was Roy Decarava, Gordon Parks, you know, these people who could tell an entire narrative in one still image. And so for us, it was about trying to find a way to distill the emotions of the characters of the film into these very concrete, very vivacious, tactile images, and also to create a world, a Harlem circa the early 70s, that was a landscape of faces. And so a lot of the things that arose from the actors portraying these characters in a certain way, their emotions, really directly influenced the way we built the film visually.
Okay, and I know that as I was watching the film, I kind of think to myself sometimes, if there was one thing or one scene or some lines that you might have said, you know what, I really wish they hadn't cut that out. What were some of those scenes that you kind of wished had stayed in the film?
Yeah, there's a few. There's a lovely scene. This character played by Diego Luna, who's on Narcos Mexico right now. He's in we call Y Tu Mama También. He's in Star Wars. He plays like this Mexican like restaurateur who creates a solidarity between Tish and Fonnie, between black and brown. And there's this lovely scene that's not in the film where Tish starts going to the restaurant, because it's like a safe space, but she's going through so many things that she won't eat. And so she has this cold plate of food on the table. He comes in, takes the cold plate off, puts a hot plate on, sits down, and talks about the bond between black and brown. He says, "Somos familia." It's a really beautiful scene. But, just because the scene is beautiful doesn't mean it needs to be in the film. And so that's one. The other one is there's a scene where Fonnie brings Tish home back to her parents and tells them, "I propose to your daughter. I ask for her hand in marriage." But when you watch a film, you can clearly see these two characters are deeply in love.
Right.
And this family clearly accepts him. So it was repeated information, and so it couldn't stay in the film. But yeah, those two are the ones that I think about the most.
Okay. And do you see any similarities between If Beale Street Could Talk and also your Oscar Award winning movie Moonlight? What are some of those similarities?
I do think I see some similarities. I think they're both about black families, very different black families from very different circumstances, but I'm always thinking about this idea of nature versus nurture. And I think in working out the two films, especially because I wrote them essentially at the same time, there's this idea of if you took Regina King's character, the mom in Beale Street, and made her the mom in Moonlight, if you took Naomi Harris's character, the mom in Moonlight, and made her the mom in Beale Street, how would that affect the lives of those two children at the center of those stories? Again, nature versus nurture. And so I think in that way there is some connective tissue because they're ultimately both about these mothers who are trying to do whatever they can to protect or help raise their sons. Very different circumstances, but working towards the same goal.
Okay. Wow. The other thing that I thought was incredible was the music. There was so much great music in this film, and I guess the one question is, why did you choose some of the music that you put in there? Because I know that, of course, it was related to the timing, but how did you go through that process of picking the music for the film?
Yeah, we had I work with a music supervisor, this guy named Gabe Hilford, did a really great job. For me, it was about, again, trying to capture what it was like, to be alive and black in Harlem in the early 70s. That sort of dictated a lot. Mr. Baldwin was a cultural critic as much as he was, a social critic. And so, he loved music. He wrote a lot of music into the book. A lot of it we couldn't afford to get, so I had to find my own music. But I think it was just about trying to again reflect black life. The way I grew up, I never remember sitting in the living room and somebody wasn't playing some kind of music in the background. And so I knew there was going to be, because this is a film where there's a lot of people sitting around their homes, having these very intense discussions, and there's always something playing in the background. Now, what's being played is very important. It needs to be both a part of the characters, but also a part of the theme of the film. And so we went about it very diligently. And then the same composer who did the score for Moonlight did the score for this film as well. Very different scores, but this one is more jazz-based with like these cellos and violins, like blending with these saxophones and flugelhorns and trumpets. So yeah, to me, it's all about trying to do with the sounds, with the music, with the score, to reflect the emotion of the characters.
Now, one thing that I know that we're very big on is talking about black economics, right? And kind of, making sure that we're pulling ourselves up so that the community can be better, right? And so in your case, are you thinking of other additional projects that you can do in the future that will incorporate more people of color and continue to kind of propel what you've been doing right now?
Yeah, I am. In a certain way. I think I've been so focused on just telling these stories that I haven't really taken the steps to do the kind of work that like Ava's doing. Ava started like 3 different companies, at this point, and I've got like my one little company, that's trying to make this film and the Underground Railroad. But it is something that I'm always conscious of and aware of. You know, I think that getting a foothold in this industry, you know, is a very complicated thing. You know, certain people just don't have certain levels of access. And so I'm always, you know, when we're casting, just going down the cast list, who's in what department, who's doing this, who's doing that, just so people can sort of like get that first step into the industry. And then it's not about meeting me, it's about meeting everyone on that film, because you never know where the next opportunity is going to come from.
And so in regards to other projects that you might be working on, what are some that you have kind of lined up for the future?
So the next one I'm doing right now is an adaptation of Colson Whitehead's book, The Underground Railroad. And so I'm doing that not as a feature film, as a limited series, so like 10 episodes at Amazon, and hopefully we'll be filming that sometime next year. Okay.
I have a couple more questions for you because I know you have to run. So if you had to tell a young black boy growing up now or a young black girl growing up now and give them some type of advice if they wanted to be in the film industry, what type of advice would you give them?
I mean, to be honest, I would give them the same advice that I would give, you know, a white person, a green person, a yellow person, which is you got to find people in your friend circle, in your age group, in your community, you know, who believe in you and who believe in your work. And you got to stick with those people. You know, I look at myself, you know, both this film and Moonlight and my first feature film had the same cinematographer. You know, a guy I met in film school at Florida State, same editors, people I met at Florida State, same producer, people I met at Florida State. I think people always say, oh, how do I break into the industry? It's like, no, don't break into the industry. You got to find your clique.
Okay,
you know, find people who believe in you and who you know, you guys go watch movies, you discuss it in a very aggressive way that helps you grow and you help that person grow, and you got to stick with them. You know, it's not important to go without, it's important to sort of stay within.
Last two questions for you. So this film, of course, was set in New York City, but I know that personally when I went and I saw it, I felt like we were in Philadelphia. We could have been in Baltimore. Was that done on purpose?
It was done on purpose. You know, I think I felt like with the quote that opens the film, it's a quote that Mr. Baldwin gave for the German release of the original publication of the novel. You know, his idea or his thesis with this was, you know, this story could take place in any of these black enclaves in America. You know, like, if you took the title of Beale Street Could Talk and put it on Moonlight, it would still be the same film. And so I do think it's important that the community that we depict in this film, the family we depict on this film, that yes, it's specific to the time and place that the movie is set, but it could be any of our families, you know? And I think in that way, we can sort of find communion and solidarity in the story of Tish and Fonnie.
And why do you feel that it's important to really kind of have these films that kind of give us that humanity? I think a lot of times, you know, we go to the movies and we see the same thing, right? We see, they're a thug or they're ratchet or they're, you know, this, that, and the third. But I feel that, you know, a lot of with Moonlight and also with If Beale Street Could Talk, there was that humanity. And so why do you do that? Why does that speak to you?
I think it's just when I got into making films, I didn't get into it with commercial aspirations. I was just trying to find a way to express myself. And I think the best form of expression does bring characters forth who have possession of their full humanity. You know, it's interesting, you know, in Moonlight, you know, you have a thug, you know, you have a drug dealer, you know, you have a woman who is a crackhead, you know, which is, my mom was addicted to crack cocaine. Jerome McCraney's mom was addicted to crack cocaine. And yet those characters, I believe, arrive in the film with their full humanity. And so now you're not seeing them in the same way.
Right.
Now you're seeing the root cause of how they became the person they are. And hopefully you're seeing a way for them to journey out of the person that they've been maybe forced or coerced into becoming. And so I think for me, the only way to make these films, the only reason why they're worth making, is to bring people to the screen who do have their full humanity. That way, when you walk out the theater, it's fiction, sure, but it reminds you of either yourself or someone you know, someone you love, somebody you need to get back in touch with to show them love. You know, I think that's the reason why we try to tell these stories the way we do.
Yeah, and I totally agree with you, because I feel that with Moonlight and also with If Beale Street Could Talk, you felt connected to those characters. You felt the pain that, you know, Regina King's character was going through, and it really resonated with me, and so it really was just a fantastic piece of work. I guess we really should make sure that we tell folks when to see the movie.
Yes, If Beale Street Could Talk opens in LA and New York tomorrow, 12/14. If Beale Street Could Talk opens in Philadelphia on Christmas Day.
Okay, all right. Well, thank you so very much for just coming in, joining us today. I really, really appreciate it. And also, do you have any like social media handles or anything people can follow you?
Yeah. You can follow me on Twitter or Instagram. I think I'm at Barry Jenkins. Or you can follow the film too at Beale Street.
Okay, well, great. Thank you so very much.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
It's a pleasure.
Pleasure. Thank you.